Pornography is the main source of sex education for young people today, says Anglican priest and YMCA Victoria Senior Advisor Scott Holmes. Revd Holmes says that pornography, which has become more violent, is undermining positive changes to attitudes towards women. He drew on research conducted in Victoria by Brophy Family Services to highlight these issues to the October Melbourne Anglican Synod. Anglican Media caught up with Revd Holmes afterwards to talk about the findings on pornography and young people.
One is that the vast majority of young people are getting the vast majority of their sex education from pornography. It's just so prevalent out there and so easy to access despite the good intentions of parents and schools and otherwise. That's mostly where young people are getting their sex education from. So that was one finding. But the second finding, I guess more disturbing, is that porn has become far more aggressive and violent and misogynistic than it was even 10 or 20 years ago. So when you do an analysis of porn, what you see now is that the vast majority of it shows men being violent to women, no consent, no attempt to there's no sense of consent or being mutual, and showing women enjoying being treated violently and being treated aggressively. So what the message that young people are getting from this pornography is that that's how sex should be, that's how relationships between men and women should be, which of course is completely at odds with what we know they should be. So the people that actually did that research are just in the process of finishing off and releasing an education package for schools. And look, the primary aspect of that program is to try and give young people the skills to critique pornography, to actually see it for what it is, the skills to actually analyse it and see what's happening in terms of the lack of consent and lack of mutuality and so forth. To be able to look at it and say, okay, actually this isn't real. And not only is it not real, but it's really harmful. So that's the main purpose of that program, is to do that. There's a general agreement that it's going to be very hard to try and stop kids' access to porn. The best thing we can do is give them the ability to actually know what they're dealing with when they do access it. And in terms of the advertising industry, it's an interesting one, that one too, because if you go back 50 years or 40 years. And look at some of the old ads, they were incredibly sexist and incredibly stereotyped. And in a sense, you might look at today's advertising and say we've moved on. But actually, if you stop and, if you were to sit down and watch an hour of television and record it and get rid of all the television and just stick with the ads, it's amazing how still those ads reinforce the ideas that women's domain is the house and that men's domain is the work world. And the subliminal or unconscious message in so many of those ads is about, you're a real woman if you've got a spotless house, and you're a real woman if you can produce this sort of meal, and you're a real woman if your kids look this perfect and beautiful, and you're a real woman if you're wearing these clothes and look this sort of size. And likewise for men, you're a real man if you drive this big truck, and you're a real man if you drink this beer, and you're a real man if you look like this. Those sorts of ideas still dominate the advertising that we see. And again, it seems little things, but what they're doing is perpetuating these stereotypes about how men and women should be. And by perpetuating those stereotypes, they're perpetuating the idea that men and women are vastly different, and that men are better, and that women are lesser. Beyond that perhaps more subtle stuff, we are still seeing very sexist advertising. There's a small bunch of advertisers that continue to use extremely sexist images in their advertising. And I guess they're using it for shock value. Often they will pull those advertisements off after they've had the reaction. They get the shock they want, but they're still having a harmful effect.